Consciousness is all there is. What does it mean? And how do we unlock our full potential? My name is Anna Mareike Chu. I'm the director of the Vancouver Transcendental Meditation Center and on the board of directors of the Canadian Transcendental Meditation Organization. On behalf of all our teachers at our local center and our Canadian TM organization, I would like to warmly welcome you to today's special event entitled Unlocking Consciousness through Transcendental Meditation. We have a very full afternoon program planned for you, so we'll dive right in. But before, I would like to acknowledge the Coast Salish people on whose traditional territories we are privileged to live, work, and play. Our special guest today will take us on a journey about the how and why of living a more connected life. Tony Nader, MD, PhD, is a Harvard-trained medical doctor, neuroscientist, and a globally recognized authority on consciousness and transcendental meditation. As Maharshi's successor, Dr. Nader is the head of the International Transcendental Meditation Organization in over 100 countries. With extensive research spanning neurochemistry, neuroendocrinology, and mind-body connections, Dr. Nader's works explores the depths of human potential. Now, beside all his academic brilliance, Dr. Nader is also one of the most caring, kind, fun, enlightened, and inspiring thought leaders I know, who is dedicated to the well-being of all global citizens to help remove conflicts in society so that higher values of human potential and human goals become the guiding light of everyone. Today's event is actually particularly special to me because about 8 years ago, I attended a similar event with Dr. Nader just across the street. He was touring Canada for one of his previous books, Ramayana in Human Physiology. At that time, I had been practicing TM for a number of years and was keen to explore the depths of human potential myself. Little did I know about the wealth of ancient Vedic wisdom, cutting-edge research, and profound experience that would unravel from that time on. Soon after, my career as a sustainability consultant expanded to become a teacher of transcendental meditation and its advanced programs. Over the years, I had the great fortune to work more closely with Dr. Nader in hosting international courses and events. Now, for those of you who are new to transcendental meditation and are looking for deeper meaning and experience in life, I hope that today's talk with Dr. Nader will open a new door for you to unlock your full potential and accelerate your personal evolution. Today, we'll explore with Dr. Nader the complex web of contemporary challenges and reveal transformative solutions along the way. How can we elevate our consciousness to possess the power not merely to face these challenges, but to flourish amidst them and unlock our full potential in the process? Please join me in welcoming Dr. Tony Nader. Thank you for being here, Dr. Nader.
Thank you. It's wonderful. Thank you for the beautiful introduction. And it's a joy to be with all of you in one of the most beautiful cities in the world. It's fascinating. It's beautiful. It's inspiring.
Yeah, we're actually thrilled to have you back. And Dr. Nader is not only here for us, but for TED as well. So we really are lucky to have him before he dives into a full week. What I want to start with, it's been 8 years since your last visit, and your soon to be released, soon to be bestseller book, Consciousness is All There is coming out in August. Now, what inspired you to write this new book?
It's like any publication, we write in order to share knowledge that we have gained or discoveries that we have made in science or thoughts that we have had in philosophy about life. And I have dedicated good part of my being on this planet to research questions that came to my mind when I was an adolescent, like every one of us. There is no one I can imagine practically who doesn't ask questions about the meaning of life, why we are here, what is this universe made of, what is its purpose, where are we going? And we sometimes get answers from different angles, and often we find that there are no real full answers, and we forget the questions. So I delved into science to try to understand what makes humans what they are, what makes life what it is, why we make those decisions. And I happened to be in a place in the world where a civil war was happening. And that made me even think more about why there is violence, why can't we live in peace, what are the motors, what are the reasons, what is going on. And I thought everything was to happen on the human physiological level, because I had at that time the belief that it's our physiology that creates our mind. And it's through the working of our nervous system that we have thoughts, or we have consciousness, and that we make decisions. And so I went into medicine, then into science, researching brain science and different aspects of what works and how it works and what it creates. But at the same time, I had learned Transcendental Meditation, which is an approach from the mind level, which means if you can change things from the physical level, that is one way to do it. But you can also change things from the mental level. And it's obvious that when you have a certain thought, you have reactions in the body that accompany the thought. You know, even in the dream, when the thought is not about a reality, but a fictitious reality that is a dream, if it's a tiger pouncing on you, you're going to have high heart rate, high blood pressure. And, you know, if you're fragile, you might kind of get annoyed by it quite a lot. And so a thought, even that doesn't experience a true reality, can lead to very fundamental changes in the physiology. And that led scientists and philosophers and thinkers to ask the question, what's the relationship between mind-body, into the problem of what we call the mind-body problem. And as I kept looking into reality and studied philosophy and studied ancient knowledge with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, ancient wisdom, belief systems, scientific investigation, discoveries in modern science about quantum fields and quantum theories, but also a number of factors that were unexplainable, really, even from physics perspective. For example, entanglement, action at a distance, delocalization, being in different places at the same time, which were phenomena that even today we call weird in physics and in physiology. I thought to go back to my questions of adolescent times and see how I can put it all together in a consistent wholeness that can answer those fundamental questions about how we come to be where we are in this universe, what is the meaning of the universe, why manifestation happens, why creation happened, and what is its purpose and how does it unfold? Do we have freedom, or it's all based on very strict laws that don't allow us to make a decision out of action and reaction, and so everything is determined, predeterministic, or there is some force sitting there at a distance and controlling the phenomena that act in life, whatever it is, divine or a force or whatever one likes to believe. So the real big questions about life, why there is good and bad, what is sin, what is all of that. And scratching my head for all these years, I came to some very fundamental solutions based on all of this together, like a converging number of factors: science, philosophy, wisdom, and certainly the teaching that I learned from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who was based on the ancient knowledge of the Veda and Vedic literature, which has both a theoretical part, but also a practical part and technologies that can improve one's life from the side of the mind, which is mainly Transcendental Meditation and its other programs. And so having put all of this together for myself, I felt I should share it with, with the world, for whatever value it might have. But for me, it is an answer and a big relief in being able to actually face those big questions and answer them on the basis of a very simple paradigm, which was very important also, not a very complicated, supernatural, kind of unexpected, but a very simple, logical sequence of thoughts based on findings from science, wisdom, knowledge, logic, and put it together. And particularly what is important in that, I felt, was its impact on full development of life, that it has a direct impact on our well-being, and as individuals, but also as societies, and in resolving conflicts. And so this is a contribution that I thought I could make and share it with the public and the scientists and the philosophers, and open it to discussions as we can do actually today, hoping that this will be an interactive thought and discussion.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think we're opening a wide terrain of room for conversation. Maybe to start, there are two terms in our title that I'd like to uncover a bit more. We're talking about unlocking consciousness through transcendental meditation. So the first one, what would be a simple working definition of consciousness? For layman's term, what do we understand by consciousness?
Consciousness is the most familiar thing to us that we take for granted. It's to be conscious, to be aware. So it's not conscience. That's very important to differentiate it from conscience. Conscience in English has a moral kind of character, which means, do you have bad conscience, good conscience? Are you acting according to morality or not? That's not what is meant, although there is a very close correlation between them. But consciousness is that phenomenon, if you like, as if it's a phenomenon, that allows us to be aware of things. So we can understand often consciousness more from what happens when there is no consciousness. So you can imagine when you are under anesthesia, for example, or in coma. Imagine, just we don't want to go there. But then what does it matter for you that you are the most loved person or the wealthiest person or the most knowledgeable person in the universe? It doesn't matter. If you have some things that you experience in life, you experience them through consciousness, through your awareness. So that awareness is a very personal, subjective experience of reality from your personal perspective. So can you tell that anyone around you is conscious? Well, you can deduct that by saying, well, they are like me. they seem to be hearing, they seem to be looking, and therefore I can deduct that they are conscious. But you can't see their consciousness. You cannot directly experience it, you know, and now with all the fiction movies and all of that, we have these robots that are very advanced. Are they conscious? To what extent they are conscious, actually? And so consciousness is that ability to be conscious. Now, it's very important to realize, and that's the main aspect of the book, also one of the main aspects of the book, is that consciousness is not only a specialty or a prerogative of human beings. When we think of consciousness, we as humans imagine that anything that is conscious must be conscious like us. And in fact, when we look at our own consciousness, we see that consciousness goes through different phases. For example, when we are dreaming, it's one kind of consciousness. When we are sleeping, we think we are not conscious, but actually the body is conscious. The body is aware there are functioning things, and if you pinch the body, it will wake up. So it has some response. It detects something. And when you're dreaming, you are conscious of an unreal, in a sense, reality. When you're awake, you can be very conscious, very alert, and you can also be drowsy and less conscious. And so as science and philosophy keeps on looking at our reality, we're coming into the understanding of consciousness as a fundamental aspect of our life. So to say it in other words, also, we have the body, we have the senses, and we have feelings, and we have consciousness, awareness. And so far, we talk about improving the body through exercise, maintaining our health through diet. So we're attending to those physical parts. And we are more and more interested in improving our psychology through meditation or through interaction with others, through counseling, different techniques. And we have never thought about consciousness, our consciousness, because we take it for granted. We think this is something that is already there, as if, to take an example, although the example is not complete, you're watching a movie and it's going on the screen, and it's the movie that is important for you. The movie happens, and that's it. That's the movie. That's why you go to the cinema. And the poor screen sitting there, which shows you all kinds of movies, you forget about the screen. It's not important. But without the screen, there is no movie. Without the screen, there is no activity, no sense, no feeling, no nothing. And so consciousness is that reality on which everything is projected. But we take it one step more philosophically and just say, and we see if we have time to discuss that if you are interested, that actually consciousness is not only the screen, it's the dynamics that create the screen and the dynamics that creates the movie. So consciousness is more of a primordial level. I can go back on to that. Now, just before we go into more details, it's very important to understand that in this paradigm that I present in the book, consciousness is not just human-like consciousness. Human-like consciousness is one aspect of consciousness. And human-like consciousness varies, as we said, from sleep to dream to waking under different stages. But there is animal-like consciousness. Your little cat or doggy or whatever, they have consciousness. They are actually consciousness. They are expressing something, they're living something, detecting something. And so we're expanding the concept of consciousness from a human-like consciousness to all kinds of other consciousness. What are all kinds of other consciousness? They can be animal consciousness, they can be plant consciousness, they can be even mineral consciousness. And one wonders, come on, what are you talking about? If I take a stone, for example, what consciousness that stone has? You see, you cannot believe it, that a stone has consciousness at all if you try to look at consciousness as a human-like consciousness, because the stone has no nervous system, has no sense of any knowledge, of any understanding. Yet a stone, when you leave it from your hand, it falls on the ground. Why would it fall? Because it senses gravity. It senses gravity, and we are going to call this, it's by definition, we're going to call this a very meager, minor kind of consciousness. So the definition of consciousness becomes any sensing, any detecting, any interacting with is a phenomenon of consciousness. And that phenomenon of consciousness can be very, very meager, minor, and can expand to more and more consciousness through the manifestation of higher and higher levels of complexity and orderliness, leading to the human consciousness, which is a higher level. And even within human consciousness, you can have all these varieties of drowsy state, or very alert state. So consciousness is expanding through the field of evolution in a sense, and it becomes wider and wider. And as we said, when we want to improve our life, we improve our life through our physical activities to improve our body, our diet, our mind, our ego feeling, our sense of belonging, and all of these values that are on a psychological level. But one thing we didn't know is that we can also expand our consciousness. And that is something very fundamental, because if our consciousness operates, for example, under stress, this is when the brain enters into a functioning where certain parts of the brain, what we call the lower parts, the limbic system, etc., are activated, and the higher parts are shunted. The blood even doesn't go there, where we actually have higher thinking of beauty, thinking of music, thinking of the future, thinking of creativity and beautiful things to do, and all of that, and peace and harmony in the world and all of that. This goes away when you're under stress or fear. It is your lower brain that actually narrows your consciousness so that you think of very specific conditions, which are usually danger-related conditions, and therefore you have a narrow consciousness. When your mind is settled and calm, we see this in Transcendental Meditation, the blood flow goes also to the cortex, to the different parts of the cortex, and we see that the brain starts working in a coherent way. So the right side with the left side, the front side with the back side, they get more and more integrated in their functioning. And this is not just an idea, it's something that has been repeated by electroencephalography and studies many, many times. And when you look at the functional magnetic resonance, fMRI, you actually see the blood going to all these different parts and being spread out. So our higher parts of brain activity are enlivened, and our experience on a consciousness level is that of what we call broad comprehension, yet with the ability to focus. So it's not like you lose the ability to focus. You are able to focus very sharply, but you have a broad comprehension. And that's why when we come to Transcendental Meditation, it has been used, for example, for pilots in different armies, like the Swedish army, because the pilots have to be able to have focused attention, but they have to have what we call situational awareness. You know exactly where you are, you know where you're going, there are so many things happening, so you have to focus on the specifics, but your mind is broad and comprehensive. So consciousness can be improved. And we usually say then consciousness is the container of knowledge. So if our consciousness is narrow, our ability to get knowledge and information is limited. If our consciousness is broad, our ability to see possibilities, to experience different things is also broader. And so today we have a new player in the market, and that is consciousness. You used to think, okay, all I can do is feed myself well, do exercise for my body, maybe do some psychological things, listen to music, listen to that and to this. And you're going to see, I am absolutely certain in some ways, that today you will have now to think, how can I broaden my awareness? How can I broaden my consciousness so I can have the ability to think more, to see more, and to experience more? And so this is what consciousness is. It has a range. It can be improved. It can be expanded. And transcendental meditation
Yes.
is that technique of meditation that allows us to go beyond the surface value of the thinking to expand our consciousness. So I leave it to that because I spoke too long, even though I said it'll be an interactive.
This is actually beautiful. And you touched already on the second aspect. And really, I feel there are two parts to it because, and I remember 8 years ago, fathoming the uniqueness that we have, and you've done research on the human physiology, we have a unique nervous system and machinery as humans that actually allow us to experience, kind of in layman's term, the stuff we're made out of. So we're actually able with our machinery to experience that, as you say, is consciousness, which wants to experience itself. And coming back to the title, if we say unlocking consciousness through transcendental meditation, what, first of all, is transcendental meditation and how does it do it? How does it unlock this locked thing that apparently is at the basis of everything in creation?
Beautiful. I understand that most of or a majority practice transcendental meditation, but some don't. So I'm going to take an example that is common when we teach, that everybody knows who practices TM. We say the mind is like an ocean, active on its surface, and it has waves. And as you go deeper and deeper in the ocean, it gets calmer and calmer and more settled. So the actual mind, when we call consciousness, is the entire field of the ocean of existence, of being, from the most settled level all the way up to the surface levels where you have the waves. And the waves, we can say, are being the level of surface appreciation of what is happening in the ocean. And we often say that the thought that comes to us is like a bubble that starts from the bottom of the ocean, and it rises up as it goes towards the surface. And as it goes up, it becomes bigger. And when it reaches the surface, we are aware, I have a thought. So thinking and doing anything with the mind is what we call meditation. So there are different kinds of meditation because there are different ways of thinking, different ways of concentration or contemplation, or thinking by taking a distance from the thought, examining one's breathing as they do in mindfulness and other techniques, in which we direct the mind towards certain processes that are happening and in fact guide our consciousness. When you guide your consciousness, that's what we call attention. Attention is directing your consciousness to a specific aspect or a specific object of observation. And these are all the different techniques that guide and direct the attention to different objects, be it a thought, a memory, breathing, or whatever, trying to force the mind to be on one level. So that's concentration. Think of ideas, philosophies, that's contemplation. And like that, it could be any kind of mind activity. And that's what we call mindfulness in general, or meditation in general. Now, transcending means to go beyond those levels, So to transcend literally is translated as to go beyond. So to go beyond what? Is to to go beyond the surface wave level and dive deeper and deeper into the self. And I say why it is the self. And go to the bottom of the ocean and experience the entire ocean. So you experience the place from which actually your thoughts, your feelings, your desires, your projections to the future come. And that is what we call actually the self, the true self. And so the entire field of consciousness requires the expansion of awareness from just being tossed around on the surface waves to knowing where you are, who you are, and know that you are the ocean and experience the different fields. And that is how consciousness is expanded. And the results of that are very profound on mind, body, health, behavior, and even on the environment. So the effects from consciousness are very profound on the surface level of reality. And this is for a good reason. And that's the reason I present in the book, which is that actually consciousness is all there is. So when the time comes, I'm happy to address this point.
Is this the time?
Okay. By popular demand, we're going to delve into something a bit philosophical. But it
Buckle up.
Yeah, buckle up. Just bear with me a little bit because it's a bit theoretical, but it has very profound implications. And I'll take you through, or we go together through thinking about what is ultimate reality. What are things made of? All of us think of what is everything made of? What are the constituents of life? What are the constituents of reality? Of physical or non-physical, whatever it is. And this question has been asked throughout time, throughout philosophies and time and thinking. And the answers have been proposed on that level, which are all very ancient, and nothing is new in that sense. I'll tell you what is new a little later. What is not new is that there is something subjective and there is something objective. Subjective is what you experience, as we said, love, feelings, joy, happiness. These are the subjective aspects of experience that are what we can call colors of your consciousness. So when you are happy, that means your consciousness is colored by something you call happiness. When you are even feeling pain, it's not just some electrical thing that are happening. You're feeling it, you're experiencing it. It's very personal. And that personal experience is a color of your consciousness. The color of your consciousness, therefore, changes based on what you are experiencing. That's the very personal experience, which is subjective. That's what we call subjective experience. Objective is what we see through our senses, what we experience through eyes, touch, hearing, etc., what we can weigh in an instrument, etc. Now, throughout time, there are ideas about what reality is made of. People who discuss this topic, normally they always start with this kind of understanding. And even if you go to some talks, like TED Talks, most of the people who discuss this topic will go through that sequence of thinking. So it's not new. But we have to do it as a basis for our understanding. So we can start with a philosopher, a French philosopher called Descartes, as you might all know, who said, when I dream, my dreams feel real. When I am awake, my physical reality feels real. And when I'm asleep, I don't seem to have any reality. When I eat something wrong or a drug or something, I can see hallucinations and they also seem real. So what is real? What if there is some kind of a demon? It's just, of course, a thought experiment, just for joke, for kind of illustrating. It doesn't think like exactly that. But he says, what if there is somebody or something, and he called it, translated as demon, who is tricking me and making me believe that things are real when they are not actually real. The proof is when I'm dreaming, I absolutely think things are real, but they're not real. What if the objects are like a dream? What if now all of us are just dreaming? How can you be so sure? We can be sure in a sense because we all agree on the same thing. So common agreement helps us think that reality is as we commonly see it. But what if we have a common misunderstanding? Why not? So he said, therefore, what about myself? Do I exist myself? I might be like not real. And then he said, wait a minute, there must be somebody observing. I am thinking. So I have consciousness. I can rely on that because that is something that is real. So without my consciousness, I can doubt anything. But with my consciousness, I think I am real. Therefore, he said the very well-known sentence, I think, therefore I am. Mm-hmm. So my amness, my actual existence, and the assuredness of my existence is based on my ability to be conscious, to think. And then he was faced with the question, okay, so there is something which is subjective that seems to exist, but there is also a physical reality that we feel exists. We don't reject that. That physical activity is our body. We touch our body, we pinch our body, we feel pain, you know, somebody says something to us, or we experience something, we feel it, we experience it. So reality on the physical level is also real. And so he decided that there are two realities. One is the spiritual, if you like, spiritual meaning not material, not physical, and one is the physical reality. So therefore, there are this Cartesian point of view, which Descartes' point of view, that there are two realities, one physical, one material, one physical, one spiritual or non-material, consciousness level. And then the question came, how these two interact with each other? How can something that has nothing to do with material or physical entities interact and influence something that is physical and material? No answer to that. So it's a mystery, kind of, if you assume that reality is dual. And then came the scientists. They said, all this nonsense about something maybe spiritual or personal or something like that is too complicated and impossible to manage. So we're never going to deal with it. We leave it alone. So all that is this subjective consciousness, all things, you know, we can think of the mind and psychology, etc. But to try to find what is consciousness is out of the question. Leave it alone. Why? Because the scientists thought everything is physical. And therefore, when the physical reality gets complex and orderly and creates a human nervous system, then consciousness comes about. So consciousness is described as an emergent quality. If you hear that term, consciousness is an emergent quality. It emerges. It's a phenomenon that happens within the physical body. And the philosophers, David Chalmers in particular, he said, well, there are two problems in this situation. One is an easy problem, and that is when you see something, I will one day be able to exactly define what happens in my brain, what neurotransmitters, what electrical activity, what happens exactly in my brain when I see a flower and I'll figure out exactly why I see a flower and how this comes in my memory and all of that. And although this problem is extremely, extremely difficult and we are still looking for it, he called it the easy problem. Because that one day we can figure out how this happens. And then he said the hard problem is how all this mechanical, electrical, physical, material changes result in our personal, subjective experience, such as experience of love, experience of well-being, such as being a conscious individual who has an ego, has a sense of being, a continuity that grows, that feels, that desires, that projects oneself into the future. That is the hard problem of consciousness. So when you hear the hard problem of consciousness, it is how is it possible that consciousness can emerge from something physical? Even if you go deeper into quantum mechanics, because some people were saying, oh, it's at a quantum mechanical level. But quantum mechanical, yet there is physical material, and that's not personal feeling, personal experience. It's not consciousness. It's matter interacting with each other. And my personal experience is different, is something intangible in that sense. So in the past 30, 40 years, or even less, 15 years really, scientists actually started to get interested in consciousness because of the importance of consciousness in our life. Actually, it's the most important thing in our life. Think about it. You know, if I would, bargain you to take your consciousness away against anything, it's like, okay, you give me $10 or your consciousness. That's an easy problem. But, I take your house and your this and that, and I leave you consciousness, or you give away your consciousness and you keep your house and your like and like that. You will think a little bit, what would happen to me if my consciousness goes away? What would I be? Who would be experiencing yes or no? The most precious thing that we have is our consciousness. The absolutely most precious thing we have is our consciousness. And therefore, consciousness plays a very important role in our life. And the problem of how consciousness emerges or what is consciousness has fascinated the scientists, and how we can expand consciousness, such as we do in Transcendental Meditation, is also fascinating now, and people really do yoga, meditation, all that. All that we do in our life actually is to expand our consciousness. So scientists have probed into what is consciousness and how it emerges. And in the past 30 years or so, big labs, big thinkers, big scientists have tried to find a way to see how consciousness can emerge from the physical, physiological changes. And I can tell you today, there are many theories, but none of them comes even close to having a hint of how this can be possible. So it's still a completely hermetic, impossible to understand possibilities, to the point where most scientists and philosophers in particular, such as Chalmers and others, have said that one day there will be some really crazy idea, and then we'll understand how consciousness actually comes. And so what we are proposing is a crazy idea. But that crazy idea solves the problem completely. What is the crazy idea? It's not so crazy, really, because when you look at all the evidence from science and philosophy and life and how it answers questions, it actually becomes the most logical, the most understandable, the most simple way to solve this problem. So again, what is the problem? Consciousness, matter. So something physical, something non-physical. The two existing together doesn't work. Matter is alone. Matter becoming consciousness, so far nothing happens. We can't do that. The other solution, which is on the other side of the story, is to say that consciousness is all there is, and that consciousness appears as matter. Okay? As I said in the beginning, this is not a new idea, a new paradigm. Already in the Vedic literature, in the Vedanta, it says that consciousness is all there is, that consciousness is primary, that it is that which there is, and everything else appears through consciousness. And many philosophers throughout time has talked about it. They told them idealists. Idealists, not in the sense that they want ideals, but in the sense that they believe in that ideas are primary. Plato and others who said, you know, the cave, being in the cave, everything is an illusion, and the ideas are there, and all of that. So many philosophers, Leibniz and Schopenhauer and others, have talked about this idealism. What is the problem with that? Is that we exchanged one hard problem with another. Remember, the first hard problem is how consciousness can emerge from matter. Impossible to solve. It's a very hard problem. Now the problem that we have is different. How matter, physical reality, emerges from consciousness. How matter emerges from consciousness. So I call this the hard problem of physicalness in comparison to the hard problem of consciousness, which means how can consciousness emerge from physical material things? We're asking the question, how can something non-physical lead to the physical reality? The way they have solved this question in the past is by saying it's an illusion. And there are many scientists who, when they looked very deeply into our modes of perception, how we build our universe through our nervous system, etc., have come to the conclusion that actually consciousness must be primary, but the other things they cannot understand. That's why you hear, you know, people talking about we are living in a simulated universe. We are like, you know, the Matrix. We are in the Matrix. You have seen that movie, I'm sure. And, you know, some says, no, the universe is actually a hologram. And this is because they can't find a solution. And why is that? It's because science converges into this ultimate reality, particularly even if you look at the science from its most physicalist perspective, looking of what this object made of. It's of molecules. What are the molecules made of? They are made of atoms. What are the atoms made of? Elementary particles. What are the elementary particles made of? They're made of fluctuations of fields. What is that fields? Well, quantum fields and quantum field theory, and then ultimately more and more unified fields, so that science contemplates today that there is one field from which everything emerges, and that's a mathematical field. We are saying that field is a field of consciousness. And therefore, when we dive into ourselves, we experience, when we transcend, we experience that field. Okay, again, I talked for a long time. They told me that I have 1.5 hours, so. But in chunks.
That's right.
So,
maybe, yeah.
So the proposal is, just to say this one last thing, then you can stretch, stand up one, take a deep breath. The proposal is, and that's what I have in the book, of course, you can see from which side I'm coming to it, that consciousness is all there is. Okay, now consciousness is all there is. Okay, fine, this has been said before. What are you telling us that is new? And what is a new contribution? The new contribution is to solve the problem of how consciousness appears as matter. That is an unsolved problem. How consciousness actually makes us who we are and how we experience things, and what is the implication of that on my life, on the meaning of my life, on also what's the best way to solve problems in life, what's the best way to deal with the environment, what's the best way to guide artificial intelligence. If everything is material, that's one worldview. It leaves us with questions about how to guide artificial intelligence, because we have no sense. We would have no sense about what's the meaning of life. Why should we guide something anywhere? Why can't we, destroy all the people who don't think like us? What's the problem? Everything is material anyway. And then you have to think, oh, what's the advantage of destroying them? It creates war and like that. And you have to think from a pragmatic point of view, but then you bypass the true reality of things, and you have no reference for the meaning, the purpose that is happening. What is evolution? Where is it taking us? Do we actually have freedom, or we are acting in an automated way? So all of these questions come when we have a worldview that says everything is material. We don't have answers. When we say that reality is consciousness, and we have a mechanism by which we can explain how consciousness appears and why we are here and what is the reason for our manifestation, then we have a true possible understanding to solve serious problems in terms of meaning, in terms of decision making, in terms of conflicts, in terms of artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, the environment, etc., all based on development of consciousness for the individual and for society. So there is one secret I didn't tell you yet: how consciousness appears as matter. That's a big question, but we have the solution.
Beautiful.